Welcome everybody to another episode of the Haunted Vermont podcast. My name is always Paul Doski, and joining us is another member of the GMGS. And if you don't know what I mean by GMGS, then that stands for the Green Mountain Ghost Society. You may remember the one of the founders or co-founder. I forget how he worded it in the episode. Anyway, you can go back and listen to it. And without further ado, this is another member of that same team. So please welcome Jarrod Sammis, right?
Jarrod Sammis.
Jarrod Sammis.
I think the two. Often I'd like to admit.
I think the two R's is what's confusing me. So I thought about that, Jarrod. Yeah.
Yeah, it was always referred to as the biblical spelling from what people tell me, but people can say whatever they want. I just say, well, makes it easier for a typo, I guess.
Well, I wanted to say Jarrod, but for some reason, when I just looked at your name again, I was just like, oh, that's what I'm going to say.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, but no, thank you for having me here today, Paul. I appreciate it. It's good to be here, and hopefully I can follow up my partner's interview equally well. So it's good. It's good to be here, though.
Well, I mean, that's one side of the story, as I like to say. If we had both of you on, it would have been interesting that way to have that conversation. But I think that probably would have went on for like 4 hours. No, I'm joking.
Oh, it might have actually. You're not wrong.
Well, so Jarrod, before we start, so what I'd like to kind of do is for those that, obviously I don't know you and everything else, but to kind of give yourself a little background of the supernatural, paranormal, however you would like to call it, in this crazy world of the unknown, I'll just say. So what kind of got you into this field to begin with?
Well, it's a strange situation in regards to that, because you always have situations say, oh, people see scary movies and they see this, and everybody has that to a degree. I'd say for me personally, though, a lot of it was the interest of the history. So I actually I was born in Vermont, but I actually grew up in Ticonderoga when I was younger. So that was quite an experience, because I'm not sure how familiar you are with Ticonderoga, but there's a lot of history.
Yeah, I remember vaguely taking a trip to Ticonderoga a long time ago in middle school. But I mean, other than that, I mean, I know, you had the fort, you have like a battle basically. I want to say Ethan Allen was involved. Other than that, I mean, I think it's around the same area where also the infamous Battle of Hubbardton kind of took place as well, around that same borderline. So yeah, there was a lot of crazy stuff going around, I think.
Oh yeah, I can definitely fill you on that. So my family actually has been in this region since prior to the American Revolutionary War. My father's family was originally from Long Island, but my mother's side was from this area. So my mother's direct ancestor was actually in the French and Indian War as well too. So during that time period, the British Empire and the French Empire at the time were actually competing in this area. Vermont and upstate New York were actually sharing that boundary in the Champlain Valley, and there was a lot of what people call border skirmishes then. And they were both using different Native American tribes, basically engaging in these small proxy wars with each other. And eventually it came to blow with the French and Indian War. So the way Ticonderoga comes into that is that the British actually were trying to take Ticonderoga, which was originally known as Carillon, from the French. So that was right on the peninsula near Ticonderoga there. And the British, the first time they tried doing it, actually were repulsed. And it was primarily Scottish Highlanders that took the brunt of the casualties there. So the issue with that is that needless to say, the French and the British at that time had no love for each other. So there were results after that battle where the French just literally left British and Scottish soldiers to rot in the July sun. Like, they didn't even bother burying them. So fast forward eventually, about a year down the road, the British did eventually take the port, and they called it Ticonderoga, which Ticonderoga is Abenaki for the word land between two waters, because it's right between Lake George and Lake Champlain. So fast forward to the next war. Of course, there's always conflicts in our history, and of course that's what makes the Northeast such a diverse area, especially for hauntings. And I promise this all comes around in a full loop here. So it's actually quite interesting that we're talking about this, because the 250th anniversary of Ethan Allen taking Fort Ticonderoga was actually just within this past week.
That's right.
So, and I'm actually from Castleton, so Castleton had their celebration. Ticonderoga had their celebration.
Not to cut you off, but they're doing a reenactment or something soon, right? At least in the Ticonderoga area, right?
Yep. So they actually had a group of bikers that were supposed to be following the path of Ethan Allen going to Ticonderoga. So they did that, and it was definitely raining, but it was also raining during the time when it actually happened. So technically, it was historically accurate. But the thing with that as well is that Ethan Allen, as story knows, took Fort Ticonderoga. Allegedly, a British soldier tried firing a shot. It was raining. Powder didn't quite go off. Flintlocks. With rain, he pulled the trigger, it just goes click, and well, needless to say, the rest is history. At that point, they took it. Cannons went to the siege of Boston. Ethan Allen's men, other folks affiliated with the Green Mountain Boys, they took cannons from Fort Crown Point, which was another fort. That's another multi-war story going on with that one. But yeah, so essentially the Americans held on to that fort till 1777. So my ancestor that was in the French and Indian War was actually involved with the Americans at that point. So he was originally a Scotsman and then joined the Continentals. So he actually served with the Continentals when they were trying to protect the fort, and then they eventually had to retreat from Ticonderoga, went over the lake to Mount Independence, which is in Vermont, and they actually had a wooden bridge spanning across that section of lake. So they actually ended up retreating across there, and the British were following them from Fort Independence, now Mount Independence, which is right across the lake from Fort Ticonderoga. And then eventually they retreated to Hubbardton. And then they had the strategic retreat from Hubbardton while pulling back the British and the Hessians at Hubbardton. And eventually there was a skirmish in Castleton, skirmish in Fort Anne, New York, place where Evan actually investigated before. And needless to say that the strategic retreat continued until the Battle of Bennington and eventually the Battle of Saratoga. So that whole succession of events, the dominoes fell and actually led to the victory for the American forces ultimately in the North against the British from that entire series of events. So you have this location between upstate New York and Vermont, these two areas, within that 20 to 25 year time span, the whole sequence of events happen, of course, those two wars and all the violence that followed through, that actually ultimately led to the success for American freedom. So it's a lot that can be talked about. I know it doesn't necessarily have to deal with ghosts, but once again, I promise it falls back. So, of course, as you know, Battle of Hubbardton, it's a very popular place for people to explore for investigations, for good reason. There was a lot of violence there. But growing up in Ticonderoga, the story with Ticonderoga is that, okay, Hubbardton had its violence, but you have Ticonderoga, they had the violence there for two different wars. And not all the violence there was actually necessarily just even war casualties. The Americans, when they were during the period of time when they hold on to the fort, just the sheer cold and disease, it actually killed more Americans at Ticonderoga than the actual combat itself. So, upstate New York and Vermont, as we know, I mean, if you're outside in the cold, it is brutal.
Brutal, yeah.
Especially right on that lake. So you have these guys, they're dressed maybe in wool clothes, if they're lucky to get them, and you have that lake effect snow, you have the wind off the lake, being near the mountains. So between the war, disease, and just the environment, the area turned into a provincial meat grinder. So the thing with like Ticonderoga is that Ticonderoga itself helped feed into a lot of these legends that eventually have in Vermont and whatnot, and back and forth. This kind of symbiotic relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing that really kind of stuck out to me when I was younger is that you had all these stories of happenings at Fort Ticonderoga. You had all these stories of people that volunteered at the fort, seeing weird things, hearing weird things. One particular example that is very kind of creepy, and this is actually documented, is that if you go to Fort Ticonderoga, there's a field near one of the entrances there to the left-hand side, and there's actually a lone gravestone that's kind of sitting out near this field. It's near the forest line, but it's near a little field area. There was a French soldier that when they were doing renovations on the fort, because the fort originally, when after the war, it fell into disrepair because locals were taking stone from the fort to actually build their houses. So it's not uncommon in the Ticonderoga area to have an old house that gets demolished, and they actually have chiseled cut stone from the original fort because it was expensive, hard to produce, and their attitude was, well, the war's over, so here's all this free stuff, I'm just going to take it and build my house with it. My mom actually grew up in a house with a fort stone foundation. But when they were doing the renovations for this section of the wall to help recreate the fort to where it is today, they found this poor French soldier that somehow ended up in the wall. His remains were inside the wall. So nobody knows how he got there, but this guy, whether he fell in by accident or they just put him there or someone did something that somebody doesn't know, it's to be lost of time. But this French soldier's grave is actually marked in Thai and it's still there. So it's actually on the fort grounds. And in addition to that, they actually don't allow you to dig on the fort grounds because there are so many unmarked graves near where the old battle lines are that if you dig, there is a chance you will find human remains. And the area of outside Ticonderoga as well, areas like Shoreport Road, the Portage, heading up to Crown Point, heading to the bridge where Fort Crown Point is, that all connects to the old military road, which also goes through Vermont, which also goes through New Hampshire. So all along this area, the old military road that used to exist, they're still finding human remains even all these years later. So there's all these years of trauma and violence, and you have these people who are losing their lives, getting buried in these makeshift graves, and then just get lost to time. So to me, I always thought that was interesting. And of course, when I was a kid, the fort used to really tell a lot of their old stories. They had this event called the Haunted Fort. So they would actually take you on ghost tours of Fort Ticonderoga, and of course they'd throw in a couple guys wearing their tricorn hats, dressed like zombies and whatnot, and scare the crap out of you from somewhere. But as a kid, that always left an impression. It's like there's all this stuff going on that is just kind of been lost to the sands of time. So in addition to the paranormal aspect, it's really the history aspect that kind of has drawn me to it, because you have all these stories, whether they're actual documented fact like the French soldier, or kind of the folklore like so many of these other stories that we're still hearing about that have kind of fallen into legend. I'd say that's what really kind of got me into it. And of course, when I actually went to Castleton back when it was Castleton State College, so they had their own fair share of ghost stories, which I'm sure you know some of them.
Yeah, I know some of them. Yep. So I guess in a way, from all that
that was a big
history lesson. Yeah. So from all that history lesson, as I'm just gonna call it, so basically it comes down to that you pretty much got into it because of the whole fact and fiction with proof and non-proof kind of thing. Like it could have happened, but it did happen, sort of thing, right?
Well,
That
to a degree, to a degree. I'd say that it's half the battle with our culture. I mean, if you look at human society for thousands of years, we have things that we can document.
yes,
We have things that you dig up some clay tablets from Mesopotamia, and somebody's complaining because the grade of copper they got sent them wasn't the right copper. And that actually did happen. It's considered the oldest complaint letter in history. And this guy's just angry because like, dude, I paid for this copper, you sent me the wrong copper. Like, figure this out. And I'm just thinking to myself, wow, customer service is just as bad as Mesopotamia as it is can be today. But
yeah,
they also had their own stories too. I mean, documented stories of gods and monsters, and there's a certain amount of there's a certain thing where our cultures. I mean, as human beings, we have things that we can document. Things our day to day life. I mean, not to get too much into the weeds here, but I mean, you have Romans that drew graffiti in places that I'm not going to say what type of graffiti it was because this is going on YouTube, but you can imagine the type of graffiti you find in a bathroom stall somewhere. The Romans would just leave it somewhere, and but I mean, they also had their stories as well. And of course, each time as history moves forward, with each culture that transitions and as humanity shifts, a lot of these things that maybe once were viewed as fact kind of fall into the legends. They fall into obscurity, and with places like Vermont, upstate New York, New Hampshire, New England in general. I mean, we have several successive generations. I mean, that you see things that think of it this way: you have an article that's published in a newspaper, right? Something happens, and you look at it once, and you're kind of like, "Oh, that's terrible," or "It's this," or you have your reaction to it. But then that article disappears. You forget about it, out of sight, out of mind, and then eventually someone tries bringing up the same topic later on, but you're not around to recall that event anymore. So there's going to be that level of obscurity that kind of falls into that intergenerational transition of information and events that happens. You know what I'm saying?
right, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, I'll
Unfortunately,
let you
we
go
see
first.
that a
I
lot.
apologize. I can
No,
ramble.
no. You're good. I was just gonna say, yeah, you kind of see that a lot though, too.
Yeah.
Like, um, I don't want to say nowadays, but I mean,
Oh, it happens. Yeah.
obviously, I was gonna say it still happens nowadays, and you know, I'm trying to think of a good example, like, kind of like what you said. We could read something in the newspaper, and then next thing you know, we're gonna knock a knock on our door because they know that newspaper got delivered to our house, and they're trying to get rid of the quote evidence. So
Hmm.
I mean, they don't want to wipe it away, but they can't wipe it all, obviously.
Well, not even just that. Just things get forgotten. I mean, if something that's severe, let's say something severely tragic happens. I mean, people feel that intense pain and emotion at that time, but the world heals. I mean, the only way I can think of it is like, let's say, I, I'll give you an example. And
Yeah,
this is an
maybe yours will be better than mine. What I'm trying to think of anyway.
so let's talk about Vermont roads here for a second. So, have you ever been driving on a Vermont road and you're going somewhere, and all of a sudden there's a random bend in the middle of the road somewhere? It's like, what the heck is this doing here? You ever seen that happen?
In a way, yeah, yeah.
So the issue with that is that once upon a time when they built that road, there might have been a tree there that they built around the road, and the tree's not
Oh,
there.
yeah.
So it's just like that where it was there at one point, and we still see the influences of it, but we can't see the reason why it's there.
Right.
So
Yeah.
not to go too much into it. So
Right. Now that you say that, God, I don't remember where it is. Maybe Rhode Island, for all I know. But somewhere there's a tree where they they kept the tree, so they built around it basically. So that's basically what that reminded me was. But anyway, yeah. So Interested.
Yeah.
All right. So before we begin, so I guess what kind of came first? Like, did you kind of, I don't know, did you want to learn more about the supernatural? Like, I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out too. Is like, so did you have like your own experience prior to joining GMGS, or like, did you and Evan like? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Like you met up, or you already knew each other, and then you just talked about it. Like, anyway, I'll just shut up now. So, like,
Oh
tell us
no,
your bargain.
well, it's your show, so I gotta respect the host here.
Oh, don't worry about me, man. I feel like I'm already saying too much as it is, because it should
Oh,
be all
you're
about the guest.
good. You're good. Hey, this is, as far as I'm concerned, this is a conversation between two ghost hunters. So, I mean, there's things that you know that I don't know, and there's things I know that you don't know, and it's that sharing of information that makes us effective at what we do. So I respect it.
Perfect, man. So yeah, let's hear your side of the story then.
Yeah. So Evan and I actually we've known each other a long time. So he actually went to college around the same time I did. So we
For
both went.
Castleton then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I actually didn't know originally that he was interested in it until years down later. So he actually lives up the road from me. So as far as Vermont goes, we're basically neighbors. So I just drive like a mile and a half up the road. He says, "Hey, you want to check out this video? I got it." I'm like, "All right, I guess I'll show up there." "Hey, you want to have a beer?" "Okay, I guess I can have a beer." So it's we've known each other a long time, and we've been friends for a long time, and we've always stayed in touch, and I and as of course as Vermont goes, I know his wife, and I went to high school with his wife's sister, and it's Vermont. Everybody knows each other. At least that wasn't the degrees of separation that people reference. Um, but I remember Evan reaching out to me, and he mentioned at one point that he was starting a group. I'm like, "Oh, that's cool, that's cool." And then we ended up getting a conversation about it, and like, "Oh, you want to tag along for this?" I'm like, "Hell yeah!" Because I remember my first investigation I did with him was actually the Hubbard battlefield, um, which, and I know he's covered the topic pretty heavily. The Hubbard Battlefield's interesting as well too, because it really gave us the opportunity to kind of take our equipment, take our styles of I don't want to say ghost hunting because that sounds I don't know. I don't want to sound like ghost hunters. I don't want to say, "Hey, I'm going to go out and get my 30-06 and find this ghost."
Investigation then. Yeah,
Investigation.
investigation.
That's the right word. Yeah, yeah. Um, So everybody has their own investigation style, and I think it's like with anything else. Everybody has their own strength, and everybody has different ways of doing it. For example, we have a woman that works with us quite frequently on investigations, Deanna. She's an excellent psychic, and she is. I mean, I think she describes herself as a more of a sensitive, but however one will want to label it, she's very good at kind of the unseen aspects of the investigation. Um, but it also depends on the person. Um, so some people would look at me, and I'm a big guy. I'm like 6'4" and everything and all that, and people will be like, "Oh, why would you be considered a sensitive?" I'm like, "Well, I guess it depends on how you want to label it." I kind of have this thing that sometimes you can just get a feeling in a certain environment, even if you can't necessarily see it. So it's not quite at the level where I'm sitting here, communicating with the great beyond or something like that. But it's intuition, I would say, if that makes sense. Um, so Evan is really good at hunting locations down, and him and I both have that love of history, so we both really like to dig into it. Um, and I'm a sucker for local history, so it kind of going through like old out of copy prints of historical society books and things like that, and finding things that people printed about maybe once in 1998, but never printed it again. And it's like, well, that history's still there. You just kind of once again forgot about it. It's a tree in the road situation all over again. Um, So I think that's one thing that him and I really both focus on, is that we both try to find those stories that people have forgotten about. And even aside from the ghost investigation aspect of it, I mean, I think that's really part of the equation. Um, because regardless of how people want to view the paranormal, whether it's some explicit entity that's coming out to get you, or if it's residual energy because of the type of geology that you have in the area, carrying out all this residual traumatic energy. I remember Ghost Ghost Adventures mentioned that once, that geology can actually affect like the intensity of hauntings depending on the rock formulation. So that's that's kind of where I'm at with it, where I can't necessarily sit here and say to people, "Hey, this is exactly what this is." I can say, "Okay, this is what we're looking. We can keep our eyes open for this, but try different mediums." Um, you have your auditory recording, you have your visual recordings, and the best thing that we can do, and part of the reason why the history is so useful, is that if you find the right thing that says, "Hey, something actually happened here, but people forgot about it, and that's why things are kind of acting weird here," or is it the reason why things are acting weird here? Um, you know, that's one thing with Green Mountain Ghost Society. We're going to follow that hunch and say, "Hey, let's take a look."
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, if I remember Evan right, he did say Hubbardton Battlefield was more like your first step into the group, I think, like at your official first investigation or something like that, I want to say. And then it kind of went from there. But before we go into whatever story you got to that you would like to share with us, but I think for the listener, it might be better to just start with the one that Evan kind of left us on a cliffhanger with, which is the Rutland Free Library. So he mentioned a little bit about it, but we want to hear your side of the story because that's where he basically left it off as the cliffhanger, which was, so this is what happened. These were the rooms, but you weren't there at the beginning until like, I forget how long it was, like 20, 30 minutes later on or something like that. And then you finally came in. And that's pretty much where you begin.
So we kind of split up here and there with the Rutland Free Library. So the Rutland Free Library, the thing with the Rutland Free Library is the fact that it used to be a courthouse, and then it eventually became a library. And the building itself, I mean, it's a beautiful building. I believe it's on the National Historic Registry. The thing with Rutland Courthouse is that it wasn't just a courthouse. It was also where they had the jail in the basement back when it used to be a courthouse back in the mid 19th century. And the strange things with that, especially if you look at our video on the page, and of course I have to look at these investigations myself because I think to myself, what happened to that again? It's like, oh yeah, that happened. Because some things are just like, oh, that was creepy. I'm going to go home and just make sure, I'm not getting attached by an enemy or something. Which I always try to make a disclaimer when I'm out there. Hey, you can't follow me home. This is not allowed. Sorry. My house is already old and creepy enough as it is. I don't need any other presences there. But the basement itself, have you ever been to the Rutland Free Library?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you've seen the basement.
Oh yeah, that's where they host the book sales.
Yeah,
except for that part of that's part of the basement. That is mainly for the listener. That's mainly blocked off. That's where they store the books or something like that. Anyway, yeah, carry on.
Yeah, they have that back section has a jail cells. So if you actually look at the video, because I was watching it earlier, just recapping it, and I actually said to the librarian, and I think this was a part two, because there was a label taped to the door that said, "Do not close. Door will not open." And I said to the librarian, I said, "Hey, has anybody ever actually got trapped in here?" She's like, "Oh yeah, we had to call the fire department many times because people wander in there and be like, oh, I'm going to close this door. I'm going to be funny. Oh no, I can't get out. And I gotta say, the presence down there, the rest of the basement wasn't that bad in terms of presence. Those jail cells, whether you want to call
Tiny.
it energy, atmosphere, whatever you want to call it, just even going in there, the air was just so dry and so oppressive. It felt like you had weight on top of you just being in there. It felt like somebody took sandbags and stacked them on top of you. And have you ever had a situation? Have you ever had a situation where you're trying to breathe and like the air's too dry and it feels like you're choking?
I don't think I've had something that dramatic, but I've
Yeah.
had some like moments where uh, I went to a location and all of a sudden I felt sick. But as soon as I left, I was fine.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was kind of it was just not it was not even just the feeling of dryness. It just felt like the regular atmosphere that you feel in an environment where you're comfortable in. It's just gone. Um, and especially with the video when we had it was Dean and I doing a lot of stuff down there, and he actually had one of the um, he had the spirit box going, and he actually got sworn at. So I'm not sure what in terms of what words I can say because I don't want to get you demonetized on YouTube, but it's
Oh,
cool.
I'm not worried. I'm not partnered with them or
Okay,
anything.
good. Yeah, so a voice came through the spirit box telling them to fuck off. And at that point in time, we're like, well, you obviously don't want us here, so we're gonna let you be. But I went in there, because there were three different cells, and I asked questions. I said, what are you in here for? Did you hurt somebody? Did you kill somebody? Like, what'd you do? Then obviously we want to be able to have something that we can, at least somewhat document. And I think we got quite a bit there. Um, the jurors' room in the attic, though, that one was
That Yeah, that's the room that where Evan kind of left it off with that Druid room. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so the first time I went in there, because I actually went in there twice. I went in there preliminarily um, to just check it out. And you ever walk into a room and you realize there's a bunch of people that don't like you and they're pissed at you and they're just looking at you and know they're gonna, something's going on, something's gonna happen, but you just can't really verbalize it.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
like you just have eyes on you and you know it's like one of those like I shouldn't be here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's exactly what it was. And I got asked later on, hey, Deanna's going to go in there. She's going to check. So Deanna actually did a spirit box session in there as well because Deanna's, very, she's sensitive. So the thing we did was to kind of reduce any contamination because at that point in time, I already was setting whatever was in there off. Um, there's one thing I'm very good at with the living in the past, and I'm just good at pissing everybody off sometimes.
Aren't
Um,
we all?
yeah, yeah. So, so Deanna's in there, and we kind of did an experiment where, and I'm sure you saw in the video, she had the spirit box, but she had double layered headphones. So there was no audio contamination on her end. So she had her regular headphones in, and then other headphones on top of it, kind of like what Dean was doing when he was in the modern section of the library. So I was asking questions, and she was reading out loud the responses. Um, some of them were complimentary. Some of them were like, good, honest. I'm like, oh, thanks, cool. I hope you're giving me a compliment here. And some of them were like, bastard, fights, assaults. And I was like, okay, maybe it doesn't like me as much as I thought I did. Um, but the one thing I did notice quite a bit, and when I was listening to it again, I was actually, it mentioned the word lost multiple times. So Deanna actually vocalized the word lost,
Hmm.
alone. and nowhere. But it also mentioned justice and order, I think 3 times. And of course, that's the room where people would make the decision. Jurors would be fighting each other. Like, I think there were maybe 1 or 2 people sentenced to death in that building. I don't think they did it in the building, but the sentencing, I think, was done in that building.
Right, that's where they carried out the sentence per se of like life or death or whatever
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
And this is the room of people, just regular people, that are going at each other trying to make this decision.
Yeah, you're talking, I think, the jury in a way. I think. Yeah.
The deliberation room, I should say.
Yeah, that's a good way.
So, I mean, one can only imagine some of the conversations that happen behind closed doors there. And I
Or
was
how long? Yeah.
Yeah, or how long. And one thing I could say, I actually used to be in
The volunteer side.
actually, I used to be a state representative at one point, so I can say that conversations in government rooms are not always pleasant. So there's a lot of people that are not, they're pleasant when the news cameras around, but when it's one-on-one conversation, sometimes not so much. But that's just how it goes, and especially in a situation like a courtroom and jurors. I mean, that's the energies that must have been in that place, just between the alleged criminals downstairs in the jail cells, people upstairs trying to decide what's going to happen to them, and of course the rest of it was just a plain post office. So it's like, hey, we're gonna sentence that guy to possibly die today. Hey, can I go pick up my mail? You got a postage stamp. Oh, but hey, buildings were expensive to make, so sometimes you gotta make do with what you got. But not to go too far off the weeds there. One other thing that was kind of creepy about that place was the elevator. I'm not sure if you saw the elevator in the video or not.
Honestly, I haven't even seen the video yet, which I'm ashamed for that. But I just wanted to hear your side of the story first before I went into it.
Okay. The elevator actually was going up and down by itself, and it did that through the course of the entire night. And actually, this is on video with the librarian. The way to the elevator is supposed to go to the basement. It can only be unlocked with a key specifically for the elevator.
Yes.
So,
now that you say that,
Yeah.
I'm bringing back a memory where one of the librarians took me down because I asked about the jail cells that I could just grab a couple pictures. And yeah, now that you say that, yeah, she pulled out a key and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah. So this elevator just for that particular time.
That's interesting.
So to make things more kind of interesting, so there was one sequence in part 1, I believe, where everybody else is talking. We're not that far from the elevator. I hear footsteps that actually weren't caught on the audio, and I later talked to the librarian, and apparently 2 different employees on separate occasions of that library heard something actually say hey to them in that same hallway, and they were by themselves.
Yep. I've heard this story too, which I thought was so fascinating.
Yeah, and of course, the biggest jump scare of the entire night. We were walking around the newer section of the library, and part of it was dark. And I saw a figure in the distance, and it wasn't lit up. And I was like, "Am I actually seeing a shadow figure right now? What's going on?" The lights kicked on, and it was a Dolly Parton cutout. I'm like, Dolly Parton, what are you doing here? Come on.
You're giving me the goosebumps already, the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, I know. I mean, go to Vermont and Dolly Parton. Those are 2 sentences I figured that we would be together, but here we are.
Yeah. I mean, hey, that's a wrap. All right, we figured it out.
Yeah, we figured it out. Dolly's just, trying to help kids learn. So I respect it.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever helps kids learn nowadays. That's
Exactly.
the way I look at it. I mean, not to cut up, but just speaking of kids learning, man, like like I recently watched the documentary on Reading Rainbow, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, wow, like, you know, it's so weird how the world had changed in the last 30 years or whatever, where, like, the TV show that probably you and I grew up with, it's like it's not really around per se, but it's like, wow, like, and then you look at the stuff that's going on now, like for what you would call kids shows, it's like I don't know, it's just so different now. It's not like what it used to be when we were growing up, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a shame in that aspect too, because the libraries themselves contain so much information that people just completely forget about. I've gotten a lot of my leads. I'll give you an example. About a year or two ago, I'm sure you heard about this. They actually tried closing the libraries at the Vermont State College System.
I did hear that. Yep.
So I was actually, when I was a legislator, I was a co-sponsor on multiple bills, basically saying, "No, you're not. You're leaving those alone." Um, but the libraries themselves, I mean, I've gotten so much information about potential investigation places just by looking at old books that are out of print. Um, so I mean, just having those libraries, not just. I mean, the reading programs. I mean, those are essential. We have to keep reading programs. But just finding information about history that's not stuff that you just find on Wikipedia. I mean,
Right.
that's stuff you cite to put on Wikipedia, but I mean, the internet can only go so far. Um, so I think that's one good thing, especially with that library, is that library, in addition to its previous incarnation, it holds information that I mean, it's had generations of people reading at that library.
Right.
You kind of have this contrast of energies here. It's like, okay, this group is going to sentence a guy to death today. This group's picking up their mail, and then you have another group, later on that eventually, they're helping teach kids how to read, and they're going to check out something out of the children's book section. So it's kind of like this mishmash of all different energies, kind of put into one package. Um, so it's different. It's different.
Yeah, I would say after hearing this, yeah. I mean, I could only imagine like what you were gonna say anyway. So, but yeah,
As
I
a
was
roller
curious.
coaster. It's a roller coaster.
That's what I hear. And yeah, I remember the lady that I was talking to. I was like, have you had anything happen? Like, did you get told, hey, down here by yourself or anything? And she just like, no, no. But I'm not one of those lucky ones that she called it. But from the way she described it, from how they talk about it, is like they always think if they do hear like a random hey or something, it's like, oh hey, it's you again. Like I see you're back down here or whatever. Kind of like, hey, I see you. Like checking in, kind of thing. Like, hey, yep, I'm still here.
Yeah, auditory ones I have not. It's interesting because a lot of investigations, the auditory that I hear a lot of times are the spirit box, for example. In terms of an actual auditory manifestation, um, I wouldn't say I've had that happen on my investigations, but once again, it also depends on people. I mean, people themselves can be trigger objects as well too, depending on their past experiences and maybe occupations, things like that. Um, so it's one of those things that sometimes people just get different results depending on who they are.
Yep,
Um, so when you take two people and you put them in the same location, sometimes you just get those different results.
that's right.
So and once again, that kind of like earlier, when I mentioned, especially with an investigation group, sometimes you have people that have those different energies and different strengths. Well, it's like with Dean, for example. Dean really excels with spirit box. He's like a magnet for the spirit box. Um, my thing is that I tend to attract stuff with a millimeter. I believe that's called millimeter. The little thing that has the light that measuring the electronic frequencies and whatnot. for some reason, I seem to go on investigations. Like when we were at the Rutland Library, I was using that in the video to kind of gauge what was going on while I was asking questions, how long, the energy source around the room while Deanna was asking questions. And when we actually had the Pittsford Haunted House, there was one time we were actually towards the end of our investigation, and Deanna and I kind of worked together again. We were both had separate millimeters going off, and we were both doing our own questions at the same time, and both millimeters were going off. So there were two separate items being detected at the same time within one space. So it was interesting to think that at one point during an investigation that there were prospective, potential multiple energy sources happening at the same time in that area. So then you go some places and you won't get anything for hours. And it's like, why the hell did I come up here? There's nothing going on. So it's kind of feast or famine with that. But it's like the Hubbard battlefield. It's one of those things like walking around there and you smell gunpowder for a split second and then it's gone.
Yep.
And
or you just hear random stuff like when my team a long time ago, when I had a team is what I should say, we investigated there, and another friend of mine who does another team, he saw my videos, and at one point he was like, dude, I swear I could hear like cannon sounds in your video. And I'm like, possibly, man. And I was like, what video? He's like, oh, it was when you guys were down at the cemetery. It almost sounded like it was coming from the hill out there. And I'm just like, that's interesting. Because we were just up there, and then all we had to do was switch to a different location, and then there's possibly a different sound from the hill that we didn't hear prior. It's so interesting how that works.
And sometimes you don't see things until after the fact. It's like, did that really just happen? Did I not notice that happen when it actually happened?
Right? Or you did, but your brain is like trying to logically explain it, whereas you're like, no.
Yeah. I can certainly give an example of that. So I remember one time when it was actually when I was a college student. I actually saw this with a couple friends as well too on several different occasions over the course of like 2 or 3 different years. There was a black shadow figure on the rail trail back in college, and it would only show up when it was like at dusk. Once again, that uncomfortable feeling when something just does not feel right. It's like,
I should leave.
I should go, but at the same time, I'm kind of curious what's going on. But I should probably leave this. And it wasn't like a ghost feeling either. It was something more malevolent. So it was something that was like you really, really, really should not be. So I actually saw it probably, I'd say 3 times over the course of that time frame. It's like 2011, 2012, 2013. So I had a few other people with me that saw it as well too, and that was an experience. That's why I would get off that trail as soon as possible. I'm like, nope, I'm out of here. See ya. Oh, there it is. There's my old friend again. Oh, it's moving and it's moving closer. I'm not staying here. See ya. It should not be moving. It should not be moving towards us. It should be, it's just like
darting away. Yep. Nope.
But here's the thing where things get interesting. So fast forward years later.
Okay.
So I actually, speaking of libraries and books again, I found a old copy of the Castleton Historical Society book. So they used to publish a book, like in semi-frequently basis. I don't think they've published one in years and years. But there was an old copy from the 90s I actually found in the library. And it turns out that the end of the rail trail. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Castleton. Um, there's an area there called Exit 5, which is like a little rest stop there and a house on top of the hill. And then, a little bit up the ways, there's the old Delaware and Hudson Rail Trail that was, used to be a railroad system that was used for 50, 75 years before they turned it up and turned to a recreational trail and all that. Sorry, I'm just going to sip my tea real quick. So, after the American Revolution, the fort that was there, it was like a little log fort. It wasn't like Fort Ticonderoga or Fort Crown Point or anything. It was more like an outpost, just kind of a traditional colonial era wooden outpost. There were actually graves of soldiers there. And the graveyard was located not too far from the fort, near the entrance of the eventual rail trail. And actually, I think I have a copy of the picture on my phone of what it exactly says. It's just maybe 1 second. I'm just going to pull this.
Yeah, no problem. While you're doing that, I'll just say this because I know you just asked about as to how much I know about Castleton. I don't really know too much of it. I know some of the stories, obviously, and I also know that there's that pretty big cemetery off to the. If you're driving through it, it would be on your right hand side. I think it's actually on like Cemetery Street or Cemetery Avenue or something.
Yes. That's Hillside Cemetery. Yep. Okay. So that is a cemetery road. So that one's there, and then there's also the cemetery at the Federation Church in downtown Castleton, Old Castleton. So that area actually has some of the older graves in there. And there are a slew of other cemeteries. Castleton used to be divided the multiple towns. So you had Castleton, Hubbardton, which is still a separate town, but it used to be more closely affiliated, Hydeville, and Blissville. So you had all these separate towns and all these different buildings where churches used to be. There's a local auto salvage yard that actually has a large cemetery behind it that, when they bought it, came with the property. All these 19th century graves. That's like 40, 50 graves.
Crazy.
And you have other areas. There was one spot where there was a grave that somebody found, propped the stone back up, and then the stone disappeared. So there's all sorts of stuff here. And yeah, so actually, you know what? I have it right on my phone right here. So there's a farmhouse that's located at the top of the knoll there. That's where Fort Warren used to be. And let's see, I did section there. I apologize.
No problem. Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, for Castleton wise. Obviously, we all know about the old chapel. There's a couple other rooms. I think I might be getting it confused with a couple other schools, but I want to say Castleton was the one about Jen's Hall. Hang on, let me see. I don't want to already butcher that, but yeah, if you have it,
you're good. So the thing I'll do is I'll just basically give a synopsis of it. So basically, when the fort ended up going away and the eventual railroad got put in there, the railroad company went in. They got rid of all the headstones, but didn't remove the bodies, and just put the railroad over these graves. So essentially, long story short, on the rail trail there is documented evidence of unmarked graves of at least 10 soldiers from that colonial era. So that's basically that in a nutshell. So I thought to myself years later, I'm like, oh, okay, that would explain a lot. And in regards to the campus, I mean, the campus itself has a lot of history. And you're familiar with the story of the old chapel?
Yes.
So the old chapel actually used to be located right next to where the old seminary building was located. They actually used to be attached.
Is that the
So
one that they consider, or is that the one where they what they call it, the abandoned building now? Hang on, I'm trying to remember here because like I'm looking at my thing of
no, you're
notes,
not
sort
good.
of. And no, I'm just I guess I'm trying to figure out for clarification. Like I have one that's just what do we call it, abandoned building, but note of it just said 200 yards off of the Castleton State College lies an abandoned building. The inside is filled with untouched museum pieces that appear to have been left behind. Although there's no way to enter the building, the objects inside seem to get tossed around. I
So
don't
I
know if
can
you.
actually answer that for you, and I know which
Oh,
website you're on. It's an online blog website where people submit their stories. So actually, if you want to see the full story about the rail trail, I submitted one years ago. So the story I was telling you about, more detail regarding the rail trail and everything, it's actually posted on that website. So if you dig deep enough, you'll see that story on there. So the building that you're talking about is actually, it's one of the oldest buildings in Castleton. That is the Cobbler's Building, where people used to make shoes. So that building was, I believe, late 1700s. The Historical Society helps maintain that. So they keep a lot of artifacts in there and whatnot from the time period for shoe manufacturing equipment. Um, so yeah, definitely not abandoned. I always thought that one was interesting, and then I read the description like, oh, that's a Cobbler's Building. Definitely the Cobbler's Building. Yep, it's still there. It's still there. And if you're ever interested in taking a look, just reach out to the Castleton Historical Society. I'm sure they'd love giving a tour. They're very nice folks there.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. The other stuff I got is the dorm. I found a note that basically, or there's a,
Ellis
yeah, I have
Hall.
a note. Yeah, I have Ellis Hall, but then I just have the dorm where just basically I couldn't figure out what dorm. It just said dorm or whatever or what. But basically, the story for this one was there was an apparition of a student wearing orange T-shirt and jeans, and this person would like wake up people in the middle of the night who apparently hung himself. I don't know. So that's what I have for that one. Otherwise, I do have Ellis Hall,
Mm-hmm.
where it's been part of Castleton for years. And then it says on the second floor in the building, there's a girl student that also killed herself, and students here flushing toilets, running showers, and the sink in the bathroom, I guess, turned on and off or something, or just turned on, making it run water, and then basically it's almost like every building at Castleton College is haunted. Is basically what I got as well.
Well, I might be able to get some clarification on that. So out of curiosity, the first story about the orange jacket and jeans apparition. When is there a publishing date on that one, or is that an older one?
Um, it was one that I actually got told about. So
Oh,
basically, this is on my website that
okay.
I'm kind of going off. So otherwise, I would love to tell you. So, but again, that's what I mean. Like, that's basically what I'm designed to do. Is like I like to try to keep the old stories or the current stories
Oh
alive. Yeah. So that's basically what I'm trying to do. But as I've done this now for almost 13 years,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
it's like I'm trying to go back to old stories or even new stories
Mm-hmm.
per se, and I'm trying to find the proof to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to see if there's any actual proof, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to say like, well, here's the legit thing that quote this person, insert name, unquote, basically say that just they existed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So where that came from, I can't remember because that's just one of the stories that I've had forever.
Mm-hmm. It's a tough thing too because there are some documented suicides at the campus. Um,
That doesn't surprise me.
it's,
Like,
it's
and I'm saying that as back in the day before colleges kind of did the whole what do they give the terms? You might have to correct me, but it was like a suicide week or whatever they used to call that. You know what I mean? That's why they kind of gave you like a week off or whatever every now and then. Um, yeah.
so the situation with that is that the college system actually started issuing additional vacation time to students because of the rate of seasonal affective disorder affecting a lot of students. So that's part of the reason why Vermont started doing that. Which I mean, now we have a term for it, but unfortunately, that's a topic that can, especially with time, get lost on. To kind of rewind further back, though, the story with the Ellis Hall, that ghost was always referred to as Penelope. So the story with the alleged individual Penelope was it changes sometimes depending on who you talk to. Some people say it's in the second story, some say it's in the third story, some say it's in the first story. I actually lived in Ellis Hall for all 4 years.
Did anything happen to you?
There was a girl I was friends with that used to live next door to me. And she actually, so people always have, always kind of mutter about, weird stuff happening. And she ended up doing a late shower one night in one of the bathrooms. And from what she told me, because she woke me up and was like, "You will not believe what just happened to me." I'm like, I can believe it. She went to go take a shower, and it's like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. Of course, everybody's always busy. Everybody's always doing stuff, so you just do stuff when you can do it. And the sinks in the bathroom for the shower. And this is around 2013 that this all happened. She's in the shower, and all the sinks in the bathroom just start starting by themselves. And this was the one of the first 4 bathrooms in Ellis. So that one I actually know of actually happened. That was told to me by somebody that's not like, okay, this story. This one actually someone I knew that happened to. Somebody that I was actually friends with, and they told me about it. I was just like, okay, that's but the building, it's an old building. I mean, it's the oldest dormitory building still standing on campus.
Right.
So that's one. The gym there used to be a location of a Glenbrook mansion. So that's why it's called Glenbrook Gymnasium. There used to be a mansion there years and years ago, at least over 100 years ago. And the mansion actually ended up burning down. So when eventually the land got taken over by the college, and then they built the gym up that's there today. I have heard weird stories of things kind of bumping in the night at the gym. I personally haven't seen anything. The one building, and of course, actually, I will take a brief moment for comedic relief. The one thing I will say that did happen at the gym. I used to be a campus security officer at the college years and years ago when I was a student, and my job was to go through, lock up the building, and make sure they're good to go. And of course, when it's like midnight and you're the only one in the entire building, you gotta make sure, okay, nobody's lagging around here. Make sure you're getting out, this and that. The gym was always pretty creepy. I'm not gonna lie. I never personally had anything like I would consider supernatural happen there, but it was still pretty creepy. Just long, dark hallways with automated lights, and then sometimes they would just show up behind you and just be like this giant vortex of darkness looking down the hallway, and it would feel like you were being watched. But it was kind of it was more of a nerves thing than anything else. And I went to go lock up this classroom with the lights off one time, and I turned around the corner and I saw a skeleton. And I almost fell over. I turned the light on. There was an anatomy room skeleton, one of those plastic ones that hang on the thing where they keep and everything. So that's a good example of okay, I'm not sure if it's actually haunted or not, but I psyched myself out pretty good on that one. That was a good jump scare on that. That happens to me sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, just mind my own business, and something pops out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, okay, I mean, one time I had a job where I was locking up at one night. This different time, and I went into a dark room and I had a coat hanger scare the living shit out of me. So yeah, I threw hands on the coat hanger. And I like to think
Hey, I
I
don't blame you, dude. I probably would have too, to be honest.
not to go too into the weeds on it, but so the Fine Arts Center. One story that always stood out to me regarding the Fine Arts Center is that there was always kind of the story that there was and a lot of it you're not really sure if it's accurate. But as you know, some of it's just kind of hearsay. Some of it, you want to try and document, and a lot of it you're just kind of like, this just one of those things that the campus community has its own kind of continuous culture that changes with time, and some stories stick, some don't. Um, there was actually a student done video regarding some of the haunted stuff on the campus that was done probably 2012, 2013. It's still out on YouTube, I think, and I would definitely highly recommend watching it. It's interesting. Um, Allegedly, the building behind the campus, the Fine Arts Center, there's a building that the Fine Arts Center uses for students to store paintings, to practice things like that. Supposedly, it was an orphanage at one point, and it caught fire, and even though the building's still standing, um, allegedly a bunch of people died, including children.
Mm.
So once upon a time, and actually the interview for this was actually documented on this video. It's still on YouTube that can be seen. It's a Haunted Castleton, something like that. If you'd like to, I can send a follow-up link as well too if I can dig it up for you again.
Yeah, you can find it. I'll see if I can try to find it. But yeah.
So they used to do this thing called the Haunted FAC. I don't know if they still do it. I kind of, after being out of college for 11, 12 years now, I kind of lost track of some of the stuff that they do on campus. It's kind of like the Haunted Fort High thing. They don't do that anymore, unfortunately, which that was such a great program. The Haunted FAC, they would do ghost tours around Halloween because it was one of those things that a lot of the music students, theater students, art students, they all know a lot of this lore. And there was a interview on that video talking about a student that was doing one of these haunted tours, and they had somebody reach out to them and say, you guys did a really great job. This building, I don't know where you got the kids to do this, but they did a really great job. They make it great, and they were so professional. And the student kind of like, we don't have any kids in this program. So that's some of the stuff that has been reported. And that one is, of course, documented on the video. There's actually the old coffee cottage that's near Leavenworth Hall. There's an interview with a woman on that same video that she's a retired staff member now. There was a lone gravestone at the base of a tree that belonged to a priest, and she used to have an office on the second story of that coffee cottage building. And she claims in the video that she used to see a black figure standing next to that grave that was there, and then at some point in time the grave just disappeared.
The grave disappeared.
The actual marker disappeared.
Wow.
So it was, and this was an employee saying this. This wasn't just a case of college students. Oh, this is scary, I'm going to tell the same urban legend 10 times. This was an actual employee of the college saying, hey, I saw this black figure multiple times. There was a gravestone there at the base of this building, and now it's gone.
Yeah. Wow.
So there's a possibility that there actually may be an undocumented grave on that campus as well. And of course, it's an old town. I mean, a lot of the buildings that are owned by the campus used to be private residences. The campus security building is called the Hope Building. Was actually private residence at one point. So,
oh wow.
A lot of the buildings that for example, Glenbrook Mansion, that used to be its own building. That had nothing to do with the college, and then broke away and eventually became part of the campus. So it's kind of one of those things that you have all these prior elements of town history that are kind of, once again, the tree in the road situation. It was there, but now it's not. But you still have this lingering element that's going on. Um, so
So yeah, so real quick, I just want to not to cut you off
oh, you're good.
again, but
I get it.
uh, so anyway, you were just talking about that video on YouTube. I'm finding two videos. Maybe you can tell me if this is the one. It's like a almost a 15-minute little video, but it's called Castleton State College Ghost History Documentary.
I think that's it. Yeah.
And then otherwise, there's another one, but it's like a minute, 15 seconds, and it's literally just called Haunted Castleton, the Old Chapel.
Oh yeah. No. Nope. Definitely a 15-minute one. It was like a mini documentary that was done by some students.
Yeah.
So that was a wealth of information. It's nice to, it's kind of like somebody writing on the wall, leaving you a note that you find 10 years later. It's like, that's great information.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, so, okay, so if that's the one, then yeah, I just found it. Yep.
Yep, that's the video. So there you go.
Perfect.
So the old chapel, to kind of circle back to it,
Mm-hmm.
are you familiar with the Castleton grave robbing incidents?
Yeah, that's basically the one known thing about the old chapel. Yep. Yeah. But for those that may not know it, just to be on the safe side, if you want to explain it, that's fine. I mean, basically, too, I'll just shine on it a little bit too. So if you want to take a sip or something, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the grave robbing, basically. Oh man. So yeah, for those that may not know, basically Castleton Old Chapel was known for one of those schools where back in the day for medicine, I guess we could just say for lack of wording, but it's basically what it was, where yes, they would literally go grab bodies, graves, robbing basically, and they would use the wow, the word is cadavers. There we go. They would literally use the cadaver bodies and use them for the the experiment. I guess the operation. I don't really know a good term for that, but yeah. Eventually, though, one of the bodies that they ended up grabbing was a very important one, which the name is escaping me, but it was like the owner's wife, I think, and the way that they tried to cover it up was they cut her head off and got rid of it so they couldn't quote identify the body, but eventually did get confirmed that it was in fact her body. And somebody did tell me that they eventually did find the head, whereas last that I heard, they never could actually find the head again. But that's probably my version in a nutshell. So, excuse me. Is there anything that you wanted to add more to that nutshell story?
So it's actually the thing that happened. So Castleton in the mid 19th century was actually considered one of the best medical schools in the country. They actually trained doctors. Um, so and a lot of their doctors later on, served in the Civil War and whatnot. And the chapel was used as their learning center. And the problem is that the chapel, as you mentioned, was used for those anatomical dissections. And that was one of the hard parts that a lot of, how do I phrase this? And at the risk of sounding macabre and a bit grotesque in it, they did have dissections that they would use where they would get bodies sampled in pickle barrels and sent up from like New York City and whatnot. But the problem is that a lot of times that by the time they would get them, they were not really what you would want to be cutting in. So it wasn't actually properly teaching the doctors and the medical students about anatomy. So there was a big issue going on at that time because it basically got concluded, hey, you know what, these pickled bodies are not cutting it. We can't use this. They were very discreetly sending out students in the middle of the night trying to go to towns like Hubbardton and stealing bodies, hoping that people wouldn't notice. And they would do dissection in the old chapel. So the thing with the old chapel is that allegedly there was actually a tunnel that was underneath the old chapel that they would sneak things in and out of that would go off campus, or at least away. So the old chapel used to be on the left-hand side. You have Woodruff Hall now, which Woodruff, it stands in the place of the original old seminary building. So the old seminary building, on the left-hand side of it, where the road is now, there's actually pictures of it in the library at Calvin Coolidge Library. The building actually was on the old chapel was on the left-hand side of the building. So that might also explain a lot of kind of the weird stuff that happens with the FAC, because the FAC is so close in proximity to that location where all that stuff happened. But rewinding back a bit, the story you're referring to is a woman that died of consumption. Of course, that was referred to a lot as tuberculosis. The family knew that there was grave robbing going on, so they actually set a marker on the grave, kind of like a little crypt thing, to show if the grave had been disturbed. And when the grave actually got disturbed, the entire town of Hubbardton basically went pitchforks and torches to the college. And the story allegedly goes, there's actually an old article, I wish I had it with me, but it's an older article describing how the dean of students, was being pressed by all these mobs and everything, and trying to flip through his keys, finding his sweet time, trying to find the right key to unlock the building to show where everything is. And meanwhile, the story that you mentioned about the dissection, that was all going on. They were basically just getting rid of the evidence, chopping everything up as much as they can, and then sneaking it out. Years later, when there were renovations done at walls, I believe it was at the Federation Church, there were old stone walls. The students actually hid body parts in the masonry. So there's actually all these unidentified bodies that nobody knows who they belong to. They were there forever. Those are actually buried in a mass grave marked by a plaque on Hillside Cemetery, that big cemetery on the hill up the road from Cemetery Road.
Interesting.
So there's actually it's basically just a mass grave of unmarked body parts that are buried underneath this plaque as a result of that. However, they did, like you mentioned, they did find the woman. The woman is actually, I had her name, unfortunately don't have it off the top of my head.
I was going to say, I don't even have the name. Yeah.
I can pull it up at some point too, if you'd like. I figure for brevity's sake, not keep you here until midnight. But she is actually, I believe they reinterred her. Actually, you know what? The one thing I will pull up though that is a point of interest.
Yeah. The only thing I have right now is that she was the wife of a trustee. And that's about as far as I have, because unfortunately I never updated this part for the name, but I'm pretty sure I did hear about who the lady was too.
Yeah, so. I believe so, yeah. And unfortunately that's just kind of
how it happens or how it is, and unfortunately.
Yeah, I believe it's called, I'm trying to remember the name of the cemetery. There's a small cemetery, where you go to Hubbardton Battlefield, where you kind of have that side road that heads towards the Taconic mountain range there, the big dirt road.
Oh, you mean right below the hill down? Is
Yep,
that
right
what you're
below the
talking about? Yeah,
yeah,
I
it
know
has
exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
so the
Uh,
cemetery is actually about a mile or two up the road there. It's kind of tucked in the distance. I forget the name of it, but it is out there. And I believe that woman is buried in that cemetery. So that is a
eh,
very old cemetery. I think it's called. It might be East Hubbard Cemetery. I'm not sure. It might go by a different name. But yeah. So that's one document example of something significant happening, and the person was real. And the towns of Castleton for a long time, Castleton and Hubbardton had issues for a long time as a result of that. Um, I believe there's actually someone that submitted a newspaper poem basically documenting the entire incident and kind of slamming the medical school at the time for allowing that.
yeah, I'm. I'm trying to look at a old like a friend of mine post that he made regarding the old chapel about the grave robbery, different in 1830. It's called, for those that may want to look it up. And then basically, the title of the article is called, or the newspaper clipping is called "Grave Robbery Different in 1830" is what I should say.
Yep.
Taking Mount Cemetery in Kilton Forest last week. Where dug up Dummerston last week. Um, uh, God, I'm seeing a name, but there's it's the name they're given is Frederick Waite, but he authored a complete history of the Castleton Medical College, and
Mm-hmm.
then they give another name. Oh wait, here we go. Uh, yeah, the family plot at East Hubbardton Cemetery from the it was Mrs. Penfield Churchill.
Yep, I think that's the name. I think that's the name. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm seeing. Yes. What does it say here? It says uh, it was the plot. Yeah, so it was the family plot that was at East Hubbardton, from which the body of Mrs. Penfield Churchill was snatched in 1830. Also shown is the old medical school building, now part of Castleton State College. So
Yep,
yeah,
that's
so it
exactly
was
it.
Mrs. Penfield Churchill. So I
Yep.
should write that down and update that, because now that I have the name again, I should totally add that to that part.
I can remember stuff sometimes, but I hope I'm at least being helpful here.
So this is the funny part, right, Jared? When we're in this paranormal stuff for so long, everything just starts to become jarred together,
Mm-hmm.
and we just kind of either remember some of the stuff, but maybe not the name, or
Mm-hmm.
we remember some names, but not the place. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it all depends on the story that we're trying to retell. In this
Mm-hmm.
case, it it's this old, weird, grave robbing incident, and unfortunately, it's just we remember the details of the grave robbers and everything else, like you remember, but
Mm-hmm.
then the name that we forget, probably because it's not mentioned as much.
No.
The way I would look at it. Like for me, who's part deaf too, like if I don't say somebody's name enough, I will be that one where if you see me out in public, I will be that one where you say my name, and then I'm just gonna pretty much be like, hey, back, because I may have forgotten your name,
Hey,
but I won't forget your face. Is basically how I go about it.
I know you, but where do I know you from?
Yep. Yep. Like I just ran. Funny story. Like I just ran into an old classmate of mine about a week ago, randomly, and they remembered my name from all this time. But at the time, I could not remember their name until afterwards, and I was just like, "Yeah, thank God." thank God nobody catches on yet when I just don't answer them. But yeah, not like that. But I feel bad too sometimes. But again, it's like if I don't see you that often or we don't really communicate that well, then or that much per se, I won't keep that name in fresh in my head, but I will remember your face.
I totally understand. I totally understand.
Yeah. So anybody that does listen to this and they start to now realize that I don't mention your name right off the back like that, that's my little dirty little secret.
Hey, it's okay. It's one of those things that you remember them, you just don't remember their name. So
Yep.
you remember them. You just the label that comes with it is kind of like who's that? I know them, but what do I call
Yep. It's
them?
like please don't like make this awkward.
I'm sure the listeners
And
are gonna be having fun with this one.
oh yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure. But
Yeah.
again, that kind of goes back to, like how we were just talking about. When you get all this information of different areas that are haunted, location,
Mm.
and whatever, we kind of get to the point where it's all smashed in our brain that, like I said, it's like mashed potatoes. It's like, it's like we remember some of it and then we don't remember all of it, unfortunately. Yeah.
It's okay. Sometimes it just takes the refreshers, and then we're able to view it from a new lens.
That's right.
So like taking those old places and reinvestigating them years later. It's like the rail trail thing. Yeah, something really creepy happened there, but then I later found out, okay, there might be a reason why
It's
weird
so
stuff is going.
creepy.
Exactly, exactly. But even like the Fort Ticonderoga thing. I mean, I still, I grew up in the town, and I'm still finding out new things. I have to say, if you ever get a chance to go visit the fort grounds there, and the old battle lines from the French and Indian War, you can actually
Mm.
still see the pieces of earth where they dug the trenches and whatnot, had their fortifications in the forest. Um, but it's one of those things. You go out there, it is quiet, it is creepy. Um, you ever just go to a forested area that is got some activity, and then you don't hear anything. You don't hear birds. You don't hear animals. You don't even see a squirrel. It's just silent. You just
It's
hear the
like
wind
it's like
in
the
the
forest muted itself. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. But yeah, I mean, if there's anything that we can help with, especially I mean, Evan, me now. Um, but are there any other questions that you'd like? Because I don't want to keep you out here all night either. Because I realize sometimes that can be a bit of a chatterbox. So, but I figured the history is important, the perspective is important. Um, in regards to Bigfoot and other cryptids, I sometimes have my reservations. Maybe Bigfoot's out there. I don't know. My oldest brother's 6'7" and pretty hairy, so I think he might, somebody just might have seen him going to Walmart or something, and thought they saw Bigfoot. So
Oh, you're fine. If anything, I would just really didn't want to leave out anything that you would like to share per se. But I mean, again, like your time has been good and everything else. I mean, I guess if you wanna start wrapping things up because we all have been talking for a little over an hour anyway. But
yeah.
uh, you know, usually one of my questions is if you've had any experiences yourself,
Hmm.
would you like to share some? You've already done that, obviously, which awesome. And so I guess the question, one of the second to last question I will ask
Hmm.
is so from doing all this like between the history, the haunting, like
Hmm.
everything now, even with GMGS, Green Mountain Ghost Society. Do you have any thoughts or opinion on how either you look at the supernatural world or the unknown is what I should say, and that can go with kind of like not just ghosts but like cryptids as well, or kind of like as a whole.
Hmm. Well, it's one of those things too. the thing for me, it's viewing it not necessarily in the sense of, you have all these Hollywood movies that come out, and basically the idea is that, oh, if your house is haunted, it's gonna turn to a horror movie, and it's gonna become The Conjuring, and then a bunch of stuff's gonna happen. All of a sudden, you're gonna have a nun appear in your closet. Like, yeah, I'm not saying that bad things can't happen, that bad things don't happen. I mean, the way I view it is that if, and of course the theory is, go back to what Ghost Adventures mentioned at one point about energy and geology. That certain types of geology compositions are more prone to absorbing residual energy than other types. I forget which specific one, if it was granite or whatnot. Northeast is full of granite, which, of course, on top of having all the history, if you subscribe to that theory, then that might add to it. The thing regarding it, though, is that you have presences of people that they live their lives and they experience things the way that they do, and the thing, I think the thing that people forget about with these types of investigations, people forget that this residual energy or this spirit or whatever they want to call it, it used to be just a person. It used to be somebody, you're walking to the store and you see them on the street and you pay no mind to it, it's just a stranger. And I think the thing is, people forget about that. It becomes a joke to people. I mean, they're like, "Ooh, the spookies, the goblin, this and that." It's like, no, this used to be somebody that was alive once. This used to be somebody that had a family, somebody that had a mother, somebody that had a father, somebody that maybe had a brother or sister, somebody that maybe had children of their own, somebody that had friends, somebody that had things that they liked to do. It's one of those things that it's hard in this day and age because a lot of people will monetize the living hell out of something because, oh my god, I got scared. I'm going to shake the camera 15 times, and this this is a demon trying to get me, and this and that and this and that. It's disrespectful.
It's making us people who actually do this not wanting to make a living off it per se, but it's like those that actually try to do it professionally or do it the right way make us look bad in a way when they do that too.
Well, it's one thing because at the same time when people do things like that, it, in terms of whether there's ghosts, cryptids, things like that, in terms of even just the idea of spirits or residual energy, that goes back to the idea, and not to get too morbid, but what happens to people when they're gone? And that is really the question that people, I think a lot of people are trying to figure out, is that, are people energy? Are people just gone? Regarding the higher powers, is it Yahweh? Is it God? Is it Jesus? Is it Allah? Is it it depends. It depends on. I mean, especially you see in religion, people ask the same question too. Just it's the same question but a different font. You know what I mean? Um, but I think that's the big thing, is that people want to have an idea because I think it makes people feel more at peace with the world and with ourselves, knowing that what came before us in one way or another is still here. And I think that's the big thing, that when you have the ability to actually document something, to feel something, to see something, to hear something that is not of this realm or of this particular plane of existence that we can see. Because you have to bear in mind, you'll look at a picture. There's actually a great picture that's been put online of a bird, and it'll show the colors that a bird can see, but it'll show the colors that a human can see. And while the bird looks boring and kind of plain, to the other bird, that bird looks like a kaleidoscope. And there are so many different frequencies. There are so many different ways of viewing things. I mean, think of it. 100 years ago, infrared technology. Who would have even thought? X-ray technology. When someone's using, radioactive material to be able to see inside of objects that are solid. I mean, it's normal to us now, but 150 years ago, that's mind-blowing. Someone taking a picture. So imagine something as simple as a picture. We're talking right now. We're sharing information over a device, and it's going to you. You're receiving it. You're seeing me right now through this camera, and I'm seeing you. And 50, 75, 100 years ago, this would be like witchcraft. Like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
So we're still finding out everything that's going on, even in space, like finding out about dark matter and dark energy. And we just finally, like 10 years ago, got a picture of an atom, like this little thing that composes all of us. And then on top of that, then you have physics on top of it, that there's stuff going on at certain levels below what we perceive normally in terms of the way regular physics behaves. I mean, there's so many things that we don't know. I like to think that this is not exactly like he's going around with a radio telescope, trying to figure out, okay, is this like a interdimensional being that's trying to communicate from us, with us from the year 3000 or something. But even something just, even the technology that we use, the voice recorders, the spirit box, the millimeters, picking up that electromagnetic energy. It's not just saying, "Oh, I heard a noise. It must be a ghost." Like me locking up that gym and running into a skeleton. I could tell 10 people, "Oh my god, I just saw a skeleton at the gym." Like, no, that was me getting the shit scared out of me by a piece of plastic. But to give a final example before we start, really winding down here. I remember there was one building that my mother and my stepfather were looking at before they purchased their current property, because they were planning on moving and whatnot. And there was a building that was for sale. It was not on Fort Ticonderoga's property, as we know it today, but it was in the greater sphere, very close to all the attics and whatnot. So the building itself was kind of like in the 1970s. There was a big trend because of the American bicentennial. At that point, there was a lot of like decorative stuff that kind of was like colonial era inspired. Some of it was really well done, some of it not so much. This building kind of was like a mishmash of, okay, that's cool, or okay, that's really bad. But the building itself was dark and kind of just unsettling. You got to the property, and as soon as you step on that property, you felt like you're being watched. And I'm just walking around, and it's not just me there. Like, my mom's walking around, my brother's walking around. They're just looking around the property. And we go up to the house. The house is just kind of like, I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. It's kind of like when you walk into a funeral home. The house was very dark, which definitely did not add to the atmosphere. But it was just not. It was not a comfortable place to be in. It was just kind of like, okay, it's someplace that it's like, okay, I'll be in here for a bit, but it's like, it's not like you felt threatened or anything. It was just kind of not someplace that you really wanted to stay. Then we went into the basement. The basement was oppressive. The basement was absolutely horrendous to get, like anxiety inducing. Like, I like to think of myself, I try to be a pretty reasonable person. I'm not going to sit here and, you know, lose it off the first thing. Like, okay, I admit when I see things, they're like, okay, this could probably be this, could be that. I'm not going to sit there and be like, it's automatically this. The skeleton in the corner situation again. Or you hear someone banging and it's a tree limb against the house. Like, you're not going to sit there and be like, oh my god, it's this ancient ghost is coming to get me type thing. The feeling in that basement was
Just off.
It wasn't just off. It was a like there was a tense feeling of sadness. Like it was sadness that you like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. Like you feel like you're going to cry. Like it's bad. And I'm saying this as a person that I've done security work for. I've been involved in sport. I've done all sorts of stuff. Like it just cut straight to the bone type of feeling. Like you feel it in your gut, you feel it in your shoulders, you feel it in your chest, you feel it in your head, you feel it in your neck, you feel your entire body. And it's just like overwhelming grief, the feeling that was in that basement. And I immediately said to my mom, said, "Hey, don't buy this house. I'm not even gonna visit. I'm not even gonna come to this place." And she does real estate and she's had some doozies. She kind of has that um, sensitivity to locations that have history to them as well, and it's something that I kind of inherited. Um, so later on, like a couple months later, of course they got a different house. I found out about the property. So the property itself, it used to be near a field hospital when those battles were going on from that I discussed earlier in the interview. And of course, back then, you didn't get a Band-Aid when you were at the field hospital. If you got a bullet lodged in you, your legs gone. And that's assuming you don't die of gangrene. They didn't have antibiotics. Sterilization wasn't a thing for another 100 years. So you say a lot of bad stuff happened out there. So that's the old stuff. The previous owners of the house, their son committed suicide at the base. And bear in mind, this is something that I knew nothing about before I even went there. None of us knew anything about it. I didn't find out about it until later on down the road. So that's an example sometimes where I even just like feel tingly even talking about it because it was just even these years later. This was over 10 years ago. I still remember the way it felt being in that area. So and that's the thing. Going back to the question of B, regarding spirits, cryptids, ghosts, all that. The one thing that I will say that really would be important to factor in is not just okay, we're going to get a picture of a black figure and say that we found this, or oh, we heard a knocking on a door. It's also some of the stuff we're not at the point in time where we can pick it up yet. I mean, hopefully someday in the future we can as technology progresses. And maybe AI might be a use of that in the future. Who knows? With future technology, maybe AI can help filter the kind of the blank spots there. I mean, when Ghost Adventures took that Connect thing, that thing with all the dots from the PlayStation, and then use it to be able to detect prospective figures hiding in plain sight that you're not seeing in your regular spectrum, but it's using this technology to possibly see something. So until then, I mean, intuition still plays a big part in it. So I can't say for or against things exist, but it can be said, and I will say it full-heartedly. Sometimes there are things there that you may not necessarily see it, but you can. And even going back to the earlier thing, talk about being in a room full of people that don't necessarily like you, and you're not wanted there, but no one's saying anything, but you just have that feeling in your gut.
Yeah, you're sensing it, or I guess we could say that.
Exactly. So that's the thing, is that you still have, and I think that's the hard part, is that it can be interpreted a lot of ways. And people can debunk anything whichever way they want. People will argue online whether it's a tree or a branch. So it's one of those things that following following intuition to me is just a part of what I feel is important in doing investigations, and and especially my partners. I mean, we all have different ways of viewing things, and I think that at the end of the day, that is a huge asset because you have multiple eyes on the same object, and you may see completely different things.
Yep.
So, and it's just like with your investigations. I mean, and I'm sure Evan would love to organize something with you at some point and coordinate something. Because I think the more eyes you can have on something and the different perspectives and the different experiences, the more you can say, okay, this is something that we missed, or this is something that is a different part of the puzzle, and then someone else will come say, hey, I had something similar happen at this point, or I had this thing that's going to contribute to your piece of evidence later on down the road.
Not just that, but it's always good to see how the for lack of word, and I'll just say the environment, how it reacts to different people too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and I fully believe some people just have bad energy though. I will stick by my guns on that. Some people, if you're around them, and I'm just like, I'm not feeling this, I'm out of here. See ya, bye.
Yep.
Oh, they're fine. They're perfectly fine. Like, well, they may be fine for you, but they're not fine for me. So I'm not vibing over that.
Yeah, I know that feeling way too well at times.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So, and the same thing applies to investigations. I mean, if you have situations where you're just not comfortable or something just doesn't feel right, then there might be a reason why. And someone else may not. They may go into the same room and not feel anything.
Kind of like going back, I don't know if it got recorded, so I'll just say it again just in case. Kind of like what I was saying before, like there was a place that I've been to multiple times, but this one time that I went there, I became sick, like so bad that I wanted to leave. Like it was just that bad. But it was interesting because, and I wish I could get my friends on to talk about this because I would love to re-talk about some of these old stuff. But like for me, I got sick. I was feeling sick. I was ready to like throw up basically. My other friend was ready to Highgate out of there too because they could hear what sounded like chain dragging against the wall. So it was weird. So either way, whatever was going on that time, out of the whatever time that I've been there prior, it was just that one time where something just was not right, and we had to leave right then and there.
Yeah, I mean, as the saying goes, if you feel like something's not right, odds are it's probably not.
And the odds are you should probably not stick around too and be an idiot. So.
Exactly, and it goes to the old saying, you don't want to poke the bear.
Yeah, you don't want to poke the hornet's nest. Yeah.
or Bigfoot, but I Bigfoot's that's an entirely different rabbit hole. Am I saying that there aren't things out there that we don't know about? Yeah. Now the theory of Glastonbury near Bennington, maybe that might give some additional credence to. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Oh, I am.
Yeah. So that one is a whole different ball of wax. Yeah. So maybe that might have something to do with that. Maybe Bigfoot lives near Bennington.
Right. Maybe that might just be another podcast that we can all do like a round table on.
Hey, that sounds good to me, and I would love to come back and talk about Bigfoot.
Bigfoot, yeah, dude. I mean, people who know me right now know that. So when it comes to so this is how I categorize it with me. I am fully 100% believer in ghosts and spirits and stuff. But when it comes to cryptid, I guess I could say I'm like maybe 70% believable about that, and then the other 30% is like, yeah, I still need to probably see one or see something or whatever. Have like my own cryptid thing happen to me before I become that full believer. But if somebody were to tell me this is what they saw or this is what they heard, I'm not going to cancel that out because I wasn't there, but I still will believe their story because I mean, why could there not be something like that? I mean, how many more undiscovered species have we not come across? And that can be like taken with a can of worms between the ocean and the other parts of the forest woods area that we have not yet explored either.
Well, if you ever want to open up a can of worms, I would highly encourage looking up some of the Native American folklore of northeastern tribes such as the Abenaki and Algonquin, especially topics like Wendigos and things like that.
I know all about those, but that's, I mean, those are the ones that I fascinate myself with. But what I'm saying is to become a full believer, I would need to have my own experience.
I totally understand.
But like, what's the term that I always use? Seeing is believing.
Mm-hmm.
So if I saw a Bigfoot, that will make me the believer. You know what I mean? But until that happens, I got to rely on other people's work or evidence. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Although I do have to say, I would rather not encounter a Wendigo personally.
Me either. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
no.
Like, I don't want to be someone's dinner.
Nope.
I've read too many stories that I'd be 3 o'clock in the morning. I probably shouldn't be reading this.
Yeah, no. All right. Well, to wrap things up a little bit too, Jarrod. So the last thing I want to ask you is for those, like I said, just in case somebody did not listen to Evan's episode and they're only listening to this. So where can people keep up to date with the Green Mountain Ghost Society?
So, Green Mountain Ghost Society, we have a Facebook. We also have a YouTube. I actually do a lot of work with online stuff, digital marketing, communication, things like that. So I am going to try and work with the group in the future, trying to expand our footprint. I would like to try and see us get a Patreon set up at some point because that gear is not free. So any opportunity that we can to try and actually get better gear is always good. And that's the most frustrating thing is like you're doing an investigation, then you have a microphone. For example, like the footsteps thing that happened when I was at Rutland Library. If you listen to the audio on it, you just hear like this background noise, this kind of acoustic, droning that doesn't, that comes with bad. I don't want to say bad audio, but if there's opportunity for better audio, obviously you want to go for it. So. Strictly, stay to the point where, just to make sure that we're reaching people, make sure that we're providing better content, documenting things better. So it's not to say that, you got to stick to your roots. We're not going to sit there and say, okay, we're going to become the next big thing on, Discovery Channel or something. Like, it's not about that. But if you do have the opportunity to try at least, have better equipment, then, you got to work.
That's what we want to do. Yeah.
Exactly. And the thing is, too, we just want to be able to document things as accurately as possible. And, at that point, it's also, it's continuing the human tradition, as I mentioned before, with, Mesopotamian tablets and all that. It's our way of our generation being able to tell another story. Even if we're looking at older stories, we're still telling a story through our particular lens.
We're still keeping it alive, afloat.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, if anybody wants to follow Green Mountain Ghost Society, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. Anybody can reach out. We're a pretty friendly bunch. Evan's a cool guy, Dean's a cool guy, Deanna's great, husband's great. People's opinions about me, well, that's up to them. But I try to be nice when I can.
Yeah, I hear that, man. But all right, man, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your stories and your history lessons that you gave us today. So, yeah, we'll have to maybe have you back. And as far as getting together to do something, I know Evan and I were talking about getting together to possibly do like an old West Castleton run again, because I'm kind of curious about that part.
Oh,
That
there's
place.
stuff I didn't tell you about yet about West Castleton either, but we'll say that for a later time. And I will say we are doing an investigation again soon, so we're actually going to be doing one at the end of the week. So that's going to be fun. So
That's right. Yeah, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to check out the Green Mountain Ghost Society's YouTube when that happens and stuff gets dropped that way. Good luck with your Patreon is what I'm going to say too, man.
I hope so. It doesn't hurt to try.
No, it does not. It does not. I mean, at this point, anything is possible. Just start doing TikTok, man.
You have some change to pull off?
Yeah.
I am an impoverished ghost hunter. Even a nickel will do.
Do you have soup for the poor?
Poor.
Please, sir, I want some more. What
Exactly.
did you say?
He said, "Can I have a better microphone?"
Yeah.
I appreciate it, and once again, thank you for having me. And one final shout out to Evan and Dean and Deanna and everybody else that's helped with Green Mountain Ghost Society, and the guests that we've had on, and to the future adventures, as they say, right?
Definitely, dude. Definitely. Well, and we were kind of saying too, us ghost investigators, I'll just say, because you kind of flop on the whole ghost hunter thing, which I completely understand. We'll just say investigator for lack of word. We always have to stick together. And
I heard when it's October 31st, it's open season for ghost hunt.
That's true, man. That's true. I mean, that's how we started to begin with, was going around Halloween time and seeing what we could stir up, I guess, per se.
Exactly. Exactly.
But then again, that's around the time where the realm is thin. So yeah.
Exactly. And between this world and other ones, be determined, right?
That's right. You never know what we're gonna bump into, and and with that, ladies and gentlemen, you know the drill. Keep your eyes open because you just never know.